Hello, and welcome back to It's a Very Exciting Time, a podcast by a UFO nerd and his tolerant friend. My name is Scott, and I've been fascinated by the phenomenon my whole life.
My name is Chuck. I'm an aerospace nerd and a pretty tolerant friend.
Pretty tolerant, not overly tolerant, you understand?
No, yeah, of course, yeah.
We started this podcast because since 2017, there have been shocking revelations, from news of secret Pentagon programs to confirmed videos of astonishing craft. In a nutshell, now that we know the government has recovered non-human technology.
I really thought you were going to mess that up again. Or at least we will, after NASA recruits Scully and Mulder.
It raises a natural question. If UFOs are real, what else? Suddenly, some of these other parts of the phenomenon that seemed unlikely are pulled into the realm of the possible.
And they may still be unlikely. But even if it's new science and not aliens, woo!
Woo! It's a very exciting time.
And a quick reminder before we get into it, if you want to support our program, what we do here, Patreon. Go to Patreon. You know where to go.
Patreon.com/very exciting time. They don't know where to go.
Okay, sure. They might not.
Regulars will.
This is our fifth take. Yeah, but all our regulars already donate. So, I should say it.
Y'all, you're going to have to forgive Chuck. He's a little off today. As he said a few minutes before we started recording, he is full of cake because
so full of cake.
Today is his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a great day. I get to did some fun gardening. I got outside, chatted with neighbors, and now I'm shooting the shit with my buddy.
Yeah. And he got up this morning. She was like, "It's Chuck's birthday, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "And he has to spend it recording with you?"
Yeah, but spending time with friends, it's always a good time.
Yeah. I think we got a good show today, too. We're recording on our off week. Normally, this would be our skip week, but we're coming to you because this week there was another UAP hearing in Congress. It was very exciting. I, of course, completely underestimated how long it would take me to prepare for this. In my head, the hearing was on Wednesday. In my head, maybe like Wednesday night, I would watch it, pull together some notes. Maybe we would record after work on Thursday. I don't know what I was thinking. I have a day job. I have a family. You also have a day job and a family. I didn't even get to watch the hearing until Saturday. And it took me hours to pull together my thoughts. And I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, there was enough good stuff that we're definitely coming to you early with this. I think we got a great show talking about it. Representative Nancy Mace, who is the chairperson for the hearings, was interviewed afterwards, and she said, "We have had 2 hearings now with multiple witnesses, with clearances, esteemed backgrounds, careers in the military and other federal agencies that are telling the American people that we're being lied to, that Congress is being lied to. This is a bombshell."
Yeah, bombshell. Although actually I have a question. Is a bombshell actually a big deal? Without the bomb inside of it? Sorry. Anyways, carrying on. I can't wait to hear what the witnesses have to say.
Up next on Try to Tell a Joke to an Engineer.
Up next on Pigeon Tree Today.
But the glass is neither half full nor half empty. It is simply filled to an appropriate amount. I don't understand the joke.
Oh, engineers are the best.
So we had some very exciting witnesses. They all had kind of the same core message, with one exception. Let's see if you can spot the outlier.
Okay, cool. Be like, one of these things is not like the other ones. I don't know how that's right.
Put those old Sesame Street skills to work.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, our first witness was former NASA Administrator Mike Gold, who's relatively new to the UFO world. He's not totally new. Technically, we've heard his name before. He was part of the UAP independent study group that NASA set up. you'd be
Sounds like a
forgiven for
book
forgetting
club.
that was a thing that happened because it was kind of a nothing burger.
Mhm.
NASA was like, hey, we're doing a UAP study, and it's a group of non-NASA scientists who are doing it. It's not us. And then all the NASA scientists came back and they were like, I don't know, UFOs, man. And they had a whole section of the report that was debunking one of the videos and saying it was nothing. And the basic core of the report was NASA should do science, which I don't think anybody disagrees with. So it's a little funny to see this guy pop up. Before the hearing, when he was announced, it came out that he also worked at Bigelow Aerospace for a number of years.
Oh,
Bob
that'd
Bigelow
be cool.
is heavily involved in some of the weirder stuff like Skinwalker Ranch and the earliest versions of OSAP. So we all kind of hope maybe we're going to get some new dirt from the Bigelow guy. And like he was great. Don't get me wrong, but like he was a very NASA type dude. His opening statement said, "The topic of UAPs has captivated the public imagination for decades. Instead of vilifying or ridiculing those who dare to study the phenomena, NASA and the scientific community as a whole should seize this singular opportunity to engage the public in a high-profile demonstration of the scientific method. Information should be gathered, results should be studied, hypotheses made, and conclusions tested. The study of UAPs should be embraced, since, whatever is occurring, the chance to garner new knowledge should never be shunned. We must be thorough in collecting information, fearless in making conclusions, and open to following the data no matter how mundane or extraordinary the results may be. As the saying goes, the truth is out there. We just need to be bold enough and brave enough to face it."
This I have so many thoughts on this statement, but I don't know. It feels like one of those statements that is made like it's meant to sound really inspiring, but it sort of feels like the top of it should say Webster's Dictionary says. It's like great start. It's like the standard.
Plato said the Socratic, the scientific method.
It's like, yeah, it's good. It's just, I don't know. I hope we hear better later. But I did catch that he quoted the X-Files at the end, right?
Yes, he did. Big freaking nerd.
So like, I think that's notable though, because the X-Files theme song used to be the way we indicated like, oh, you don't need to take this seriously. It's just it's just UFOs. Now it's like,
no, it's true.
That's like the indicator. Yeah, let's do some weird UFO science. Like, let's get in there. That's great, actually.
I'm not sure that the X-Files is no longer used to stigmatize UAPs. That might just be this guy. But
all right.
I'm with you. The thing that struck me was how much his statement echoed yours in our opening line, right? Like,
that's true.
Hey,
yeah.
Whatever this turns out to be, we should be looking into it. I'm not prepared to say it's aliens, but it's worth looking regardless. That's what science is. So in that respect, I have no objections to this. What he's saying is great, but it wasn't the most exciting. Thankfully, the next few witnesses came with a little more heat.
Cool.
Michael Shellenberger, who is the journalist who broke the Immaculate Constellation story, said, one of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular. Unfortunately, there's a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about the unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the intelligence community are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. Hearing it from another person, but this is like what Grush said, right? Like, not that different.
Yeah, you guys, they're lying to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Up next, we had retired Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who we've dedicated a whole episode to. He said, I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency, a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into. Last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is not only being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress, but elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers.
I wonder. So, I mean, this feels like, okay, yeah, pretty normal statement these days. But it comes from a Rear Admiral, which is more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I am curious
Yeah.
how he came to that conclusion that it was an SAP within an intel agency. Is it just that he couldn't get access and therefore it must be an intel agency?
Yeah.
Or?
So this came on the heels of him telling the story about the email disappearing from his server about the Tic Tac incident. What he's saying is, I concluded that information was hidden within a special access program. I don't know how he concluded that it was intelligence community versus military, but his kind of point is this stuff is being concealed. But he then takes it further to say it's being improperly concealed. It's not just in a black program. It's in a black program that the right people are not being told about.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And to your larger point, this kind of gets back to what Matthew Pines was saying, right? That this year he wasn't expecting big, shocking revelations like David Grush made, but more higher and higher ranking people with more and more credibility and seniority coming out and echoing those allegations, going, yeah, that guy's not a nut job. He's right. Yeah. This is happening. I've spoken to people. I've got my own confirmation.
Yeah.
And
makes sense.
on the heels of that, our next witness was former director of AATIP, Lue Elizondo.
Hey,
he
Big
said,
Daddy Lue.
Let me be clear. Big Daddy Lue. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies.
Yeah, you said there was one that was different, but I feel like there's two. The NASA guy had a fun, different statement and everything, but Lue Elizondo coming out swinging like that.
Yeah. No, it's true. I think my kind of take on it was, we had the three guys who were saying, hey, the military is lying to you. And then we had the NASA guy like, hey, we should do UFO science. That to my mind was the difference. But you are right that Shellenberger is like, here is a program that is being illegally concealed from you. And then Gallaudet ups the stakes a little bit by going, not only is information being concealed to you, but UFO witnesses are being discredited and threatened. And then Elizondo takes it up to a whole other level with, not only are you being lied to, but you're being lied to by a secretive group that is conducting an illegal and concealed arms race with other governments. Yeah, that's a big statement for sure.
That's big.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is the NASA guy, we didn't hear much from him after his opening statement. Which, is fine. He was there. He answered some questions. Don't get me wrong. I'm not mad that he's there, but definitely we were looking for more what the other guys are bringing. And for sure, most of the questions were aimed at Lue about stuff in his book, or were aimed at Shellenberger about the Immaculate Constellation stuff, which is obviously very recent, very top of mind. First of all, one funny thing about Immaculate Constellation, Representative Mace opens up, and she's about to start talking about it. She says, Representative Luna just told me that if I say Immaculate Constellation, I'll be put on some list, maybe a FISA warrant. So come at me, bro.
That's amazing. Like, I don't know what it is about responsible adults using like irresponsible language that just tickles me. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's delightful for sure. Yeah. Representative Mace opens up talking about Immaculate Constellation. She says, there is a document that will be entered into the congressional record today, the original document from the Pentagon about Immaculate Constellation that Michael Shellenberger delivered to Congress today. So thank you, Mr. Shellenberger, for this information. 12 pages about this unacknowledged special access program that your government says does not exist.
Oh, okay. So this, hang on. I have a bunch of questions. So what does it mean to be entered into the like congressional record? Like,
Yeah, no, this is a great question. And we had the same thing, if you remember, in the previous UAP hearing. One of the Congress people put the Wilson Davis memo into the congressional record. And everyone is very excited to hear anybody in any official aspect talking about Wilson Davis, which is this kind of like deep UAP lore that everybody kind of knows about, but has never really been acknowledged.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where everyone was like, oh my God, this is real. And it's kind of like hearing that, statements were put through DOPSR approval and therefore the government authorized them to say this. Like, well, yes, that doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's not secret. Similarly, putting something into the congressional record doesn't mean this document is Congress approved. It means this document was presented to Congress as evidence and is now being preserved in the public record. So technically, there's nothing about this document that has been validated by being put in the public record. What is exciting about it is the document is now available to us. It wasn't before. Shellenberger wrote his whole article about the document, but didn't release the document. He was like, hey, I've talked to this whistleblower and they have this document that says there's this program and it says yada, yada, yada. Well, now we've got the real thing. There's a link in the show notes. You can go read it right now.
Okay. Cool. Is it, so yeah, is it heavily redacted or, no. I don't know. Is it interesting?
It is very interesting. Real weird thing. One of the things that I think is most interesting about it, most confusing really, is Mace says this is the original document from the Pentagon, which confused me because I thought it was a whistleblower report, not a Pentagon document. But the opening paragraph of the document says, this report is the result of a multi-year internal investigation undertaken in response to urgent and credible threats to the public good and safety of the U.S. and provided to Congress through UAP whistleblower mechanisms. The data consulted during this investigation and summarized in this report originate from non-public data held within the executive branch. The author obtained access while pursuing their lawful duties as an employee of the Department of Defense. This public version of the author's report was reviewed and approved for public release by the Department of State Bureau of Global Public Affairs.
Wow. Okay. That is like super confusing. Like, who conducted this multi-year investigation? Why was it the Inspector General? Why is the State Department involved? Did it go through DOPSR? Like, I have so many questions.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Unfortunately, that one paragraph and her referring to it as an official Pentagon document are very, very confusing. What I will say is throughout the rest of the hearing and in Shellenberger's original report, they talk about it very clearly in the context of it being a whistleblower document. I think it is easiest to think of it that way. I am choosing to ignore my confusion over how this thing was created, why, for whom, under what circumstances it was related, as me just kind of not understanding things. As you mentioned, one possibility is this was... In Shellenberger's article, he implies that the whistleblower kind of stumbled across this database. They weren't supposed to have access, but they had access, and the things they saw were alarming enough that they turned whistleblower. That doesn't contradict what it says here, but this adds more context that this was multiple years, which makes me wonder,
Yeah.
did the whistleblower get access to this database, go to the inspector general, and kind of act like a spy for the inspector general for some number of years? I don't know.
Yeah.
But for the moment, let's focus on the contents of the report, which is what Congress focused on and is what Shellenberger focused on and is the real bombshell stuff here. Although I am totally with you. I would love to know more about the history of this document and how it came to be.
Yeah. Okay. So should we think about this like there is a person like Grush who has been doing an internal investigation, and this is their report up?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to say. They just refer to the author of the report.
Yeah.
They say this is the public version of this report, which implies there is a private version of the report. This report was released through whistleblower measures, so it is a whistleblower report, but I don't think of a years-long investigation as terminating in a whistleblower report. So, yeah, I still have many questions.
Grush's did, though, right?
Kind of. Grush turned whistleblower by going to the inspector general and saying, I have been illegally retaliated against. And then that kicked off a whole thing that resulted in a report that went, maybe you're right. Maybe it's the same thing. I chalk this up to me not really understanding the context around this whistleblower or how the report started. But Representative Mace turns to Michael Shellenberger and she says, what is the key takeaway about the Immaculate Constellation document that you provided to us today? And Shellenberger says, I think what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information. And they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos. There's very clear images, high resolution.
Huh. That's a great summary. Did they ask anything about the verification process or how you confirm this stuff?
Yeah, totally. Representative Mace said, do you have more than one credible source? Shellenberger says, I do. She says, why do you believe your sources to be credible? How do you judge the veracity of the documentation you've been provided about this program? Shellenberger said, I checked the sources are who they say they are. They are current or former government officials. I checked the report, and I did not find it based on existing cases. That answered for me that it was not obviously circular reporting, which is one of the big concerns in this space. I also had the name of the program confirmed by more than one additional source.
Huh. It's kind of fun to see, what is the thought pattern or the step-by-step for how an investigative journalist goes about actually confirming things. Do the credentials, does a person's credentials support their claim? Are they just echoing stories? Can I get anyone else to confirm it? But anyways, so fundamentally, I still want to know, did you read the report, and does it have anything interesting that in there that the article didn't tell us?
I feel like the student being called up to the front of the class, yes, okay, Van High, but did you personally read it? I perused it. I skimmed it. I had a lot of work to do. I had a 2-hour hearing to watch. I did go over. I have not had time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb yet, but what I will say is it's broken up into sections. The section I focused the most on was kind of the information about the program. There is a whole section, multiple pages, that is examples of the type of information that the program has recovered. What types of craft they have seen, what sort of signatures those craft have, what sort of biological effects they cause, that kind of stuff.
Biological effects? What do you mean by that?
Oh yeah. No, they've got a whole big table that's broken down by like type of craft. Like saucers look like this, they move like this, they do this. And one of the line items is biological effects. For example,
Hmm.
under triangular craft, it says they can cause long-term psychological effects such as anxiety or insomnia, alongside the feeling of being watched or shared awareness with the triangle UAP.
Maybe I have seen UAP. That could explain my anxiety. I mean, that's the only obvious
There you
answer,
go.
right?
Obviously, must be.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to read this. That table alone sounds fascinating.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting and it's worth looking at. What I will say is, when I was skimming it, there didn't seem to be any like bombshells, and because it was all examples of the types of information that was in there, it didn't necessarily go into the detail that I wanted. Like, how do you know that triangular craft cause these effects? How many
Right.
people have been affected? What size study group was there? Does everybody experience? Is this just like across the board, or was it like one dude? Like, I have a lot of
Right.
questions. But
Yeah.
again, what I want to focus on for now is the information from the section where they discuss the program itself, because that's mostly what Congress is focused on and what they care about. So the report says elements of the U.S. executive branch have conspired to prevent the U.S. legislative branch from exercising its lawful powers of governance with respect to unidentified anomalous phenomena, technologies of unknown origin, and non-human intelligence issues. By the way, whether this is a genuine, real report or not, it definitely does the government thing of like acronyms out the wazoo. UAP, TUO, NHI, US exec branch, like everything's acronyms.
Okay.
But yeah, it says the executive branch has been managing UAP and NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, possibly decades. This criminal conspiracy keeps the elected government of the United States and its citizens ignorant to profound discoveries and dire threats originating from the existence of UAP, NHI, and their technologies.
I like that the report refers to it as a criminal conspiracy because it kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the government hiding stuff from the other parts of the government doesn't. It's like, all right, whatever. I'm sure that happens at
Right.
work, right? But like this kind of up levels it to
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't.
okay, no, actually that's like possibly treason, like definitely criminal conspiracy. Like, oh, right, that's the field we're in. Okay, cool, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. It feels a little inside baseball to hear about
Yeah,
oversight and how, the legislative branch should have oversight over the executive
yeah,
branch. Like, okay, yeah, sure.
yeah,
In principle,
whatever, who
why do we
cares?
care about this? Well, we care because this is illegal and they're
Yeah, right,
committing a crime against the American people. Like, oh,
right.
okay. Well, if
Just
you
to
put it
remind
like
you.
that, I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The report goes on. It says Immaculate Constellation pays particular attention to anomalous aerospace platforms that have been developed through the study or acquisition of technologies of unknown origin by foreign nations or unknown entities. Immaculate Constellation shows that the US government is not only aware of UAPs and TUO, but also foreign state efforts to replicate UAP and TUO capabilities.
Hmm. Okay. Wow, that does feel actually new. How do they track them? Like, is it just blind chance that they fly past a satellite in the area or something? Like,
Right? Yeah, it's really interesting. And I wasn't 100% clear on this either. That was kind of my impression, was this was a program that was mostly devoted to scrubbing unexpected UFOs that popped up
yeah,
in other stuff. Like, Hubble was pointed at the moon and happened to catch a UFO flying past and someone quickly airbrushed it out.
right,
That
yeah,
was the impression I got. But so two things here. One, they're focused on the fact that foreign nations have recovered and reverse engineered these craft, and
Yeah.
they're tracking them. So this next section says UAP and alien reproduction vehicle signatures and
Hmm.
preferred operating areas are known to the program, enabling a degree of strategic awareness and warning. The data within Immaculate Constellation reveals the capability of the U.S. Armed Services and military intelligence community to detect, track, identify, and engage anomalous transmedium platforms.
Okay, wow. So that's a lot. Like, the fact that
Mm-hmm.
they know how to track them is fascinating, but um, we've been hearing for a long time that that we couldn't engage or identify any of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and if that's true, um, then I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
this
what does
is a
that
big
mean
step
for
up.
us? Yeah.
No,
So
for sure. Yeah, Lue has hinted a number of times that they know how to track them, and he kind of implied that
yeah.
there was a frequency that, these craft emit. So if you monitor for that frequency,
Mm,
you can track them. But yeah, like this is taking it to a whole other level. And
yeah.
Shellenberger's article, I think, did not do this justice. Like, I don't think he made it clear enough that this isn't just a data collection program. This is a
Yeah.
targeted, well-informed data collection program that is aimed not only at maybe aliens, but also specifically foreign governments who have also recovered craft and reverse
Right.
engineered them. And it makes so much more sense. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, there are aliens up there. We've talked before about how, like, maybe the reason they don't want to admit it is it's embarrassing. Like, yeah, they're up there. We don't know what they're doing. They won't talk to us, and we can't
Right.
do
That's
anything about
this.
it. That's
Right.
awkward, but I don't know if it rises to the level of like state secret. It's just
Yeah.
awkward. But if they're up there, we don't know who they are or why they're here, but we have recovered a few of them and we've struggled to reverse engineer them. And China and Russia have also recovered them and they're flying around reproduction vehicles. And it's
Right.
critically important that we be able to track this and conceal it from the public. It puts a lot of it into context. And
Right.
I wish that Schellenberger's article had made more of a more meat out of that, because that feels like a really big deal to me.
Yeah.
Um,
If we're
the
so,
report. Sorry, go ahead.
hang on. If we really do have reproduction vehicles and we are flying these around, whether they're working well
Mm-hmm,
or not, um, I do
mm-hmm.
kind of feel like that puts us back into the domain of like, yeah, it's actually unsurprising that these are being like tucked away in multiple departments deep, sort of like the Manhattan
Yeah,
Project.
yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
The report goes on. It says Immaculate Constellation also demonstrates the extant capability to detect, quarantine, and transfer UAP and RV collection incidents before they are observed and circulated within the military intelligence enterprise, partially explaining why many otherwise cleared members of the military and the intelligence community are unaware of UAP activities.
So this is I remember you talking about this in the article, talking about their ability to scrub UAP data before anyone sees it, right?
Yeah. I don't 100% understand this. Like I'm a pretty tech savvy guy. I've spent some
Yeah.
time doing networking and stuff. But I don't know. Like I don't understand how they do this.
Yeah. I know your knowledge of network is very strong, Scott. um
All right. I've done some home networking.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
All right. I've sent emails.
Okay,
But
there
I
it
don't
is. There
understand
it is.
how do you how do you detect and quarantine information before it gets to the network? I don't get that. Is
I
that a
don't think
thing?
it I doubt that it is. Well, yes, but I doubt that it is before it gets to the network. And we have a large number of security things like a lot of them are called like IDS, or intrusion detection systems, and stuff uh, that can notice this kind of thing going through and flag it for people. Maybe they have an IDS that automatically like quarantines things that are suspicious. And a lot of it's going to be based on like machine learning. And it's going to be kind of garbagey. Just in my experience, it tends to be pretty garbagey. But I don't know. They got some smart
now
people
I'm
over there.
wondering how many like emails and satellite images just get scrubbed for no reason, and people are like, I sent you the thing. Sorry. An algorithm thought it looked like a UFO.
Yeah, every time your email doesn't go through, blame Immaculate Constellation. But here's my question. So like oftentimes when you've got kind of a garbage ML program, what you do is you send all those results to a third world country so they can view them and decide for you whether that's a UFO or not. So I wonder if our program is entirely visible in like some sub-Saharan country.
Some poor dudes coming into work having to scrub the UFO data for the military. Like they all know the truth.
Yeah. Oh, or it's all the CAPTCHAs. You're not actually looking for lights. It's actually UFOs.
There it is.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. So the report concludes, it says, finally, the existence of Immaculate Constellation provides verifiable evidence of the witting participation by elements of the U.S. Armed Services, Defense Civil Service, and the intelligence community in a global surveillance and reconnaissance mission tasked with monitoring UAPs and alien reproduction vehicles.
Yeah. I gotta say the secrecy makes a lot more sense now that we're talking about like ARVs and especially Russian, or it's not Russian, Chinese reverse engineered craft. Like that is actually a really interesting, pretty big deal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's still illegal, right? It's still being run and hidden from oversight, but I'm kind of with you. Like I get it a little more now. We have struggled a little bit in earlier episodes with like, okay, but what is the motivation to hide this? Because the answers we get, like, oh, the public can't handle the truth, there would be mass panic, have never felt right. This makes a little more sense. Like, okay, yes, there is one secret. There are unknown craft in the sky that don't come from any government that we know of. Whether they're alien or not, separate question, but UFOs are real. They're up there. That part doesn't feel like that big a deal. But the fact that they crash and we have reverse engineered them, and so have our adversaries, all of a sudden, like you said, we're in Manhattan Project territory. Like, I get it. It shouldn't be illegally hidden. The Gang of Eight should know about it. But all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, yeah. I get it.
It's funny how, like, the idea of them making a little bit more progress than we realized suddenly puts it into, oh yeah, actually that makes sense. Shit.
Yeah, totally.
So
it makes me wonder if the go ahead.
No, you go.
We are dealing with a little bit of lag here, folks. I'm sorry.
I think this is just a standard Portland standoff.
Oh no, you go.
No, you please
We're both
you
at
go.
A red light. Yeah. It does make me wonder if the end game here is like a partial disclosure.
Sure.
Like, we've been thinking like, oh, either this is going to be all or nothing. Either they tell us that aliens are real, or UFOs are real, at least, and then therefore everything else kind of follows, or they tell us nothing. I wonder if we're going to get an admission that yes, non-human craft are real. They've been here for decades. They've crashed. We have recovered them. That's the disclosure we get. But the national security aspects, right? The reverse engineering and these like tracking programs kind of remain secret after being disclosed to the Gang of Eight. That suddenly feels like a more realistic path forward to me than all or nothing disclosure.
Yeah. And I think we would still get the statement. Also, we can't figure out what to do with the craft.
Yeah,
But
I don't think
yeah,
we will get that statement.
no,
I think
okay,
it's true. I don't think they will ever admit that.
yeah, well, yeah, maybe.
Now, one of the more interesting things that came out in this hearing was we have heard repeatedly that there has been pushback on hearings and witnesses.
Hmm.
But to be perfectly blunt, we tend to hear that from um, Burchett and Luna, who,
Right,
while I love them, are perhaps among the more conspiracy minded of
a little
the
bit.
representatives and
Dadgummit.
tend to speak in grandstanding ways. But we got a little more insight into it from two members that I have a little bit more credibility for and some other witnesses. So, first of all, Representative Mace, in her opening statement, said UAPs remain a controversial topic. I am not going to name names, but there are certain individuals who did not want this hearing to happen because they feared what might be disclosed. But we stood firm. No amount of outside pressure would ever keep me from pursuing this subject to ground, come hell or high water.
Hmm. So, I mean, this is actually interesting. Certain individuals implies that maybe it's not a particular department.
Right. Yeah, I think we had kind of assumed that it was like the Pentagon as a whole or
Right,
something. But this kind of gets back to Lue's discussion of there being a cabal in there who
right.
are secretly in charge of this, and either they or people that they kind of exert control over are coming in. And this kind of gets back to the members of the House who voted against the UAP Disclosure Act. Like,
Hmm.
are those the individuals, or are those individuals being pressured by the I don't know.
The
It's
cabal.
really interesting, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, not just hearing like, hey, there was pushback, vague. This is specific. There were individuals who told
right.
us don't have a hearing, don't ask questions.
I wish they had named names.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Let's get messy with it. This was also echoed by Representative Jared Moskowitz, who said, "When the American people and members of Congress ask, are reports of UAP credible? We're met with stonewalling. We're met with responses of, I can't tell you. And in fact, we're met with people not wanting us to have hearings. We're met with people not wanting us to ask you questions. In fact, many of us were told not to ask some of you certain questions on certain topics."
Interesting. So it wasn't just like vague pushback. It was like highly specific. Do not talk about X to this person. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, for sure. And it's really interesting because before what we had heard was that the pushback was more along the lines of this is embarrassing.
Hmm.
Like Congress shouldn't be taking this seriously. And while I don't approve of that pushback, I kind of get it. This topic has been
Yeah,
so stigmatized. I understand why, especially in an election year, there might be those who are like, this isn't the time, guys.
yeah, right.
um, but hearing that it was like, don't ask them about this changes the dynamic for me
Hmm.
from this is kind of a, oh, I wish you wouldn't, to, whoo boy, okay, don't touch this red topic, like,
Right.
wow, that's very
Yeah,
different. Um, and what's
yeah,
interesting is we found out it wasn't just Congress, it was also the witnesses who were targeted.
yeah.
Tim
Makes sense.
Gallaudet, retired Rear Admiral, said, I say this as a first-hand witness to such disinformation. During a meeting with the then acting AARO director and his senior staff earlier this year, I was the object of an hours-long influence operation, which attempted to convince me of the validity of the severely flawed historical records report, question well-known UAP reports such as the USS Nimitz Tic Tac encounter, and disparage several former government authorities who have published and spoken publicly about their knowledge of US government UAP programs. If AARO is attempting to repeat the illegal and unethical DoD disinformation efforts involving UAP in the past, Congress should be gravely concerned.
Leave it to Kirkpatrick and Arrow to do like the clumsiest possible attempt at a cover up. Uh,
yeah, for sure. Right. Like, of all the dudes that you think you're going to intimidate, like, I'm picturing them pulling Gallaudet into like a witness interrogation room, like shining the light in his face, like, this report is true. Lue Elizondo is full of shit. And he's like, okay, guys.
seriously, me? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Now, that said, jokes aside, Elizondo also echoed claims that we have heard before about witness intimidation. He said, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos. A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I have personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted criminal investigation, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the intelligence community inspector general, and many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong.
Oh, yeah, this is super frustrating. I'm glad he got to talk about this. Like, hearing about what he and Grush and other whistleblowers are dealing with is super duper frustrating. And I really hope that they have some spreadsheet out there of like, these are the assholes, and these are the cool people.
Yeah, for sure. The last one I want to mention on this idea of pushback is Representative Andy Ogles, who showed up a little late, kind of closed out the hearing with this quote, which I think he was meant to speak earlier, but I'm actually kind of glad that he showed up late because it was the perfect kind of like wrapping things up. He said, "I'll say this. It is clear from my experience and from what I've seen, there's something out there. The question is it ours? Is it someone else's? Or is it otherworldly? And Madam Chairman, I would posit that as the legislative body, as the regulatory body, we must know. And anyone who prevents us from gaining access to that information, I would consider that criminality."
Yeah, that is a good wrap up. Super nice.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've got a few other fun little moments that came up that they're not necessarily all new, but it was exciting to see them being talked about in the context of a congressional hearing.
All right,
first of all, you'll remember that Chris UFO Daddy Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, who we've talked about many, many times on the podcast, our oldest and longest fan.
That's right.
There was a rumor that he was going to be at the hearing and that he was going to testify. And it turns out he was ready to do so, but that was when the hearing was scheduled for September and he had an unavoidable conflict for November.
Right.
During Gallaudet's testimony, he mentioned something about Chris Mellon and satellite imagery, which turned out to be a reference to a statement that Mellon gave to Gallaudet to provide to Congress. So Chris Mellon said, quote, "Several years ago, I reviewed a remarkable intelligence report featuring clear satellite imagery of a fast-moving UAP. This imagery, echoing Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe's 2021 remarks on UAP captured by satellite, exemplifies the information Congress should have ready access to. After my review, I informed Senate Armed Services and intelligence staff. However, when they requested the report from AARO, then led by Dr. Kirkpatrick, AARO replied that it held no record of any UAP satellite imagery."
Of course they don't. So somehow, mysteriously, it's disappeared.
I don't know, guys. We couldn't find it. Mellon continues. He says, "This incident reflects a broader systemic issue. Crucial UAP data remains inaccessible to Congress and, apparently, to AARO itself. Last week, after years of searching, I finally located and relayed to Congress the whereabouts of this satellite report, hopefully enabling Congress to submit a successful request.
Nice. Okay, so even though he's not there, like he's in his tent just like tweeting at Congress or whatever. That's amazing.
Yep.
Taking care of business.
UFO daddy taking care of business. That's right. Yeah. Another exciting thing that we heard about was the Lockheed UFO divestment story. Now, this is something that we've heard bits and pieces of over the years. David Grush kind of famously boiled it down to Lockheed has a UFO that they got from the government in the 50s. They tried to give it back, and the CIA said, fuck you. Mm-hmm. So this is something we've heard for a while, but it came up in the context of the congressional hearing, which is very interesting because usually whenever people like Lue tell these stories, they're very careful not to name names. They very rarely say the words Lockheed Martin. They'll say an aerospace contractor or something like that.
Yeah.
So talking to Lue Elizondo, Representative Eric Burleson said, does any branch of the U.S. government or defense contractors possess technology, meaning UFO technology? And Elizondo replies, my predecessor program, AATIP, was trying to collect materials of unknown origin.
It's a bit of an understatement, isn't it? Like, this was the story you told about the aerospace company that agreed to talk, but only if it got permission from the head of the Air Force, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Which he could not get because the Air Force is still weirdly obstructionist about UFO stuff. And that started Lue down the path of he was going to brief the Secretary of Defense directly and then eventually resigning in protest when he wasn't allowed to do so. So Burleson continues. He says, was that material successfully collected? Elizondo says, it was not. What happened is that there was an aerospace contract company that requested to divest itself of the material that was collected in the 1950s. Unfortunately, that did not actually occur.
So I don't remember. Did Elizondo ever confirm that it was Lockheed, or is that still just kind of a rumor?
I don't think Lue has ever confirmed it was Lockheed. He's usually very careful about this stuff. As I mentioned, David Grush has. In a recent episode, we quoted Harold Malmgren, who also said it was Lockheed. And recently, there was a story about it in Liberation Times, which, excitingly, it turns out Burleson has read. His next question was, so there was a journalist, Christopher Sharp, who said that there was a transfer between Lockheed Martin, Bigelow Aerospace, and the CIA allegedly blocked this. Can you describe that? And Elizondo replies and says, what I can say is that it was blocked. Why it was blocked, I can only surmise. I was part of some conversations later on with some of those contract personnel where they had told us all of that is accurate.
Interesting. Yeah, there it is.
Burleson says, it was previously testified that there's biologics that were collected. Are you aware of that? Elizondo gets very cautious and he says, I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time. In fact, before I was ever born. And Burleson says, and was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion? And Elizondo says, it was separate yet related.
Oh, so tantalizing. He is such a tease, though. So, like, if the bodies were recovered before he was born, when does that put it?
So I went to look it up, and I can't figure out when Lue was born. He joined the Army in the mid-90s, which implies he's around my age, probably born in the late 70s. But regardless, because of his book, I believe I know what he's talking about. In the book, he referred to rumored crash retrievals in the late 40s, including, he says he was told that bodies were recovered at Roswell in 1947.
So I don't know if I should believe it, but a website says 1951. But, oh, wait,
for Lue being born? No,
It
that's
also
not right.
said he passed away in 2003, so this is clearly not the case.
Oh, AI's made the internet
the
so much
internet.
better.
That wasn't even
All right.
AI. That's the worst part. It's just the internet. Yeah, okay.
So there was another interesting bit that if you've been paying any attention to UFO Twitter or UFO Reddit, you may have seen someone quote the phrase that Lue Elizondo said there was nonverbal communication.
Like waving?
Which is kind of true, but I kind of want to pour some water over this fire.
Okay.
Representative Burleson asked him, has anyone made contact?
Okay.
And Lue kind of looks like, and he goes, okay, has there been, to your knowledge, any communication with a non-human life form? And Elizondo goes, okay, so the term communication is a bit of a trick word because there's verbal communication like we're having now.
Okay.
And the problem is you also have nonverbal communication. And so I would say definitively yes, but from a nonverbal, meaning when a Russian reconnaissance aircraft comes into US airspace, we scramble 2 F-22s. And we are certainly communicating intent and capability.
Okay.
I think the same goes with this. We have these things that are being observed over controlled US airspace, and they're not really doing a good job of hiding themselves. They're making it pretty obvious that they have the ability to even interfere with our nuclear equities and our nuclear readiness.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a bit of a stretch to call that communication. We know that they're there.
Yeah.
But it is inferring a lot of intent that may not be yeah,
absolutely.
They are not humans.
Yeah. I'm with you on this. I kind of roll my eyes when I see people going, Lue said there was nonverbal communication, because I think most people would assume that means telepathy. You know,
Right,
like,
yeah,
oh, we made nonverbal communication. But I believe Lue was actually trying to build on a point that he made earlier, that the craft are clearly intelligently controlled. They respond to our pilots' actions in ways that would only happen if an intelligent being was controlling it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not remotely piloted, but you know, he's trying to push back on this idea that they're all like balloons or, you know, quadcopters that are following a certain course. Like there's something going on here. So I don't blame him for saying nonverbal communication, but I also would like the UFO community to kind of like take a breath and step back from the edge, buddies. Like there has not been contact made in that sense.
At least Lue didn't say there was.
Yeah, at least Lue didn't assert it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, moving on, there was one other really exciting exchange with Elizondo. Representative Mace asks him, are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs? And Lue puts on his I am not allowed to talk about this for legal reasons face and goes, I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals.
Yeah, that's like super. Even my non-military, just corporate NDA says you may not discuss this. So, yeah, I bet she did not love that answer.
She did not. And in fact, she just kept pushing. She says, has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs? Yes or no? Elizondo says, yes. Mace says, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? Yes or no? And Lue says, yes.
Oh, so he can't talk about crash retrievals, but yes, they are real. I'd love to see the legal argument that like allows him to answer that question with a yes. Like Mace clearly has like a special phrase that works.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference there is. It seems to me if I signed a document that said you can't talk about crash retrievals, and someone asks me, are there crash retrievals? And I say yes, someone's going to be pretty upset.
Right?
But, you know, Lue is very careful about this stuff. So I got to assume there's some legal distinction here that we're missing.
Yeah.
What was really funny is a few minutes later, Representative Moskowitz is talking to Lue. And he says, you specifically said the document said you can't talk about crash retrieval. Well, you can't talk about Fight Club if there is no Fight Club.
Yeah. I mean, you can. It's just not very interesting. But yeah, the fact that he had to sign a document saying you can't talk about this is a little mysterious. It does sort of suggest
we don't
there's some
have
sensitivity there.
classification and NDAs for nothing. You know?
Right. Yeah, the only other possible reason I could think of is like a performance improvement plan. Like, Lue, seriously, you got to stop talking about UAP and crash retrievals. Like,
I don't think Lue is particularly worried about what his former managers in the government think about his performance.
Probably
but I get your point. So yeah, one last bit of discussion that I thought was particularly worth bringing up. Representative Mace is talking to Lue again. She says, in your book, you mentioned government employees who have been injured by UAPs, placed on leave, and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct? And Lue says, that is correct. Ooh. Mace says, how can the government deny that we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft? And Elizondo says, ma'am, that's a great question.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Now he goes on, he says, that's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the US government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
Ooh. So do we have details on that? That's interesting.
A little bit. There's at least one case that is public that we know about. Quoting from a News Nation article now, the Veterans Administration has granted full medical disability benefits to Airman John Burroughs for injuries to his heart and eyes that he claims to have suffered during the famous 1980 UAP incident in England's Rendlesham Forest, a series of reported sightings of unexplained lights just outside Royal Air Force Woodbridge, which was used at the time by the United States Air Force.
That is totally wild. And our Discord is going to be going bonkers about that because there's a bunch of UK folks in our Discord.
Dude, that's not the half of it.
Okay.
Rendlesham is a bonkers story.
Yeah.
This dude's health records were classified, which is why he wasn't able to get medical benefits, because the people who review it couldn't get access to his records. He ended up getting Senator John McCain involved, and in the end, they granted benefits to Burroughs and another guy directly because of their UAP encounter. So we should probably do an episode about Rendlesham at some point. It's absolutely wild.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember if we had done one, and I think I actually looked it up a little while ago to see if we had, and I couldn't find it. So
yeah, it's one of those legendary cases like Roswell that has been out there forever, and part of the reason we haven't covered it, or Roswell for that matter, is because there's so much information, and not only like good information, like, oh, here's what happened, but also like people aggressively trying to debunk it for 80 years, that it's very messy to talk about. Like, you can't really talk about it without talking about the people who have concluded that it's nothing, and then also talking about the people who have concluded that those people were disinformation agents and there's actually something. Like, it just gets very hairy, and Rendlesham is one of those ones like Roswell that has a lot of back and forth. It will not surprise you to learn that similar to Brazil, there was a lighthouse involved.
Fuck. Was it the same lighthouse though?
It was not, thankfully. Yeah, this lighthouse in Brazil, it's crazy.
It's really. All right. Well, okay. So you've pulled together all the interesting bits, but I know how this works. I want to know. I want to know the messy details that happened afterwards. I want to know the drama llamas, the like UFO Twitter, I don't know, whatever.
All right. There was a little bit of drama, I'll admit.
Okay.
So at the very beginning, Representative Mace thanked Michael Shellenberger for the report, but it turns out that Jeremy Corbell, journalist and filmmaker, is the one who actually handed the report into Congress. And Jeremy Corbell was a little bit upset that Mace thanked Shellenberger for it and not him.
I mean, okay, sure. But it doesn't seem okay. It feels like that's a thing that could just be an apology or something. Is that the best
or
drama?
Not. I mean, Shellenberger's the one who wrote the article. He's the one reason we're talking about it. Like, maybe Jeremy Corbell is the one who personally handed a printout of papers to Congress, but yeah, he's not the reason we're talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems weak.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'll give you another one. Representative Tim Burchett was interviewed afterwards, and he said, I always say dadgummit after these miserable hearings. They're bogus. Look, I could have answered every one of those dadgum questions, and you know it, and I know it. I know more about this than the average bear, I guess, and maybe that's a scary thought, but this thing's a cover-up.
Dadgummit, that's more like it.
The journalist is laughing, and she goes, I'm a little surprised to hear you call these hearings worthless, since you're one of the ones who's been spearheading this and pushing this forward. And Burchett kind of sighs, and he goes, look, I guess if you want to hear more of these government officials that have some guts to tell us that these things do exist, I mean, I don't know how much more proof we need of that. What we need is someone in the executive office to come forth with this stuff. And I think Trump is the guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's some drama llama. Although, for the record, Trump has already been in office and did not help in this regard. So I don't see why he's going to change, but I guess he's a wild card. Yeah. Anyways, cool. Was there anything else? Are you holding out on me?
All right, you got me. There's one juicy little bit I've been saving for you. Former director of AARO Sean Kirkpatrick,
of course,
was interviewed about Tim Gallaudet's claims about the problematic AARO report, and he said, Mr. Gallaudet is clearly still bitter that I did not hire him into AARO when he came looking for a job. His predisposed tendencies for conspiracies without evidence made him unsuitable for a job that required objectivity and evidence-based reason. I verified my decision with some of his previous bosses and peers.
Kirkpatrick, every time he talks, just like swinging out of retirement to throw mud. I'm genuinely surprised that he didn't do this on LinkedIn, though.
That's true. That's his MO.
All right. Well, this is great. I'm delighted by all this new info. Thank you for watching the UFO hearing, so I don't have to.
Happy to, buddy.
So what's next?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're recording on the off week, so we'll be back with a new episode next week on our normal schedule. And normally I'd be panicking, like, what am I going to talk about? But it probably won't surprise you to learn that there's other stuff going on, not least of which is on Tuesday, Senator Gillibrand's Senate UAP hearing is happening, where they're going to be talking to the new director of AARO.
Ooh, yeah, who we're very excited about. Sounds like it is a very exciting time.
You might say that.
Do you know what topics they're covering?
Probably going to talk about the ongoing drone incursions over military facilities.
Wait, are those still happening? Like, we talked about that in March or something, but they're still happening?
Huh. They are. They seem to be ongoing. And also, Gillibrand might have a few questions about the new UAP report that AARO just dropped, their latest annual UAP report.
Okay, wait. So they dropped a report, like, was this timed to release with the Congressional UAP hearing?
It sure feels like it.
So what's it say?
I have, honest to God, have not had a chance to look yet. I'll tell you next week.
Okay. Well, thank you for reading that report, so I don't have
to. Oh, man. What a week.
Yeah.
All right.
Seriously.
Thank you all for joining us on this episode of It's a Very Exciting Time. You can find show notes and more on our website, veryexcitingtime.com, as well as links to our Discord and social media accounts.
And you can email us at scottorchuck@veryexcitingtime.com. And if you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/veryexcitingtime.
And Chuck, as always, my wife thanks you for listening to me talk about UFOs so she doesn't have to.